Welcome to another session of our training in Beyond Betrayal. You know, when people feel cheated by life, others, or God, you can help them to get past those feelings of being betrayed. And the 9 targeted assignments that we are sharing with you here in this program are designed to help others work through their hurts and resentments. And that's really what holds people back typically, is their hurts and their resentments. So in this and in the next video, we're going to look a little bit more closely at each of these 9 assignments. We'll be right back. Raul, thanks for joining me again in this broadcast. I appreciate your insights and your willingness to share your story as we go along. So it's been very helpful.
Of course, brother.
Yeah, so let's go ahead.
Anything that I can do to help.
There you go. I appreciate that spirit. So let's go ahead and we'll just jump right back in where we left off. And we're talking is what I meant to say. We're talking about targeted assignments. And we have 9 different assignments that we use when we're walking people through the process of processing their hurts and resentments. And here's the path that we just went through in our previous video, and I would encourage you to watch that for a review of those. You know, the activities that we have developed here in this program have been tested, and they've been proven to help other people to overcome their hurts and resentments. And so, obviously, you can develop your own resources, and we're not opposed to that. And quite honestly, in many cases, you may be able to come up with something better than what we've developed here. But what I've done, and during the course of my ministry, and I've spent many years thinking through these things and helping people, what kind of started me on this journey myself is that I actually have a form of obsessive compulsive disorder, and it was very problematic for me throughout my Christian life. I finally, after years and years and years, I don't really have a compulsive component. It's what's called pure O. And so I finally talked to my wife about that. And I decided that I was going to figure out a path to help Christians who overcome their hurts and struggles that they have along the way, because certainly I was dealing with some things that were really intruding on my ability to enjoy my walk with the Lord. And so when I was doing research along these lines, ultimately that led me to Celebrate Recovery. And I thought, well, why should I reinvent the wheel? And then what happened for me is, after we started a Celebrate Recovery program, and we ran for many years the largest Celebrate Recovery program in our community, that I was approached by a woman who has a large ministry to trafficked children in Southeast Asia. And I asked her, I said, well, what are you doing for these children? You know, because they were just starting out at that time. And I says, what were you doing to help these kids to recover? And she says, well, right now we're just starting out. And I said, well, how about I write that curriculum for you and I'll do it for you at no cost. And so that's what happened. Just a little quick aside is that, interestingly enough, that at that time in my ministry, there was a woman, an adult woman, who had been pimped out by her own mother. And her mother was a prostitute. And then when she had clients who wanted to have a different sexual experience than one with an adult woman, she would pimp out her daughter and her son. Now, she had gone through extensive therapy, kind of sorting through all of that for herself. And I said, would you mind if I interviewed you and began to kind of sort through these things, the process that you went through to find peace in your own life. And so, literally, for months, we met. And for the better part of a year or so, I worked on developing the content that eventually became the backbone for a program that we use in Southeast Asia. But all of these principles, quite honestly, are principles that work for traumatized people. And it doesn't, certainly the degree of trauma varies from person to person, but the path traumatized people have to walk down in order to find healing is the same. And Jesus gives us a pretty good indication of what that is when he said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And so we have to really go down a path of true mourning, and and so as a result of that experience and in training the staff in Southeast Asia and elsewhere to use this, and then also training some friends that I have, missionary friends that I have in Mexico, how to use this with women who have been traumatized and victimized, is that I then moved on to working on how to do this with just the general population, and because there's just a whole lot of Christians that that struggle with hurts and resentments, unresolved hurts and resentment. So that's the long story, of how this all came to be. But so we've gone through this path of the process here. And so I want us to talk specifically about each one of these assignments. And we're just going to go through the first 4 in this video. And in the next video, we'll talk about the last 5. So the very first thing that I do when I'm working with people is that I have them identify their hurts. And so I don't know, did I use this particular chart when working with you, Raul?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
okay.
do remember this.
Yeah.
The picture of the puzzle was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. So all we do is that we just have people write down their hurts, and we have a whole list of various losses there. And then in the large puzzle pieces in the foreground, we have them write down the 2 or 3 main hurts or losses that they've experienced in their life. And so in the follow-up session, then I have them tell the story of those losses. And in Raul's case, that the betrayal of his dad was the largest one. That's what like I said, in my life, and that's what I worked on in the times that I've gone through working through this program. And then when there was just a very difficult situation in a church where I was pastoring, that then I had a whole a whole new set of betrayals that I needed to work through. And I just want to have a quick aside here with you, Raul. And it's a shame that in churches, that so many times in churches, is that there are circumstances where leadership does things that betrays the trust of the people that they're leading. I don't know. Have you had much experience along those lines in Mexico there?
Personally, in my case, not really. But I guess it's because I'm a very a closed person. I don't share my situation, my emotions with many people, just
Yeah.
a few. But I've known of other church members that somebody betrayed their trust, that they shared something very sensitive, and the leader, the Christian minister, because he was trying to help share the information with other
Yeah.
people, and then yeah, it was very poorly handled. And it
Mm.
wasn't even there wasn't malice like something evil, but
Mm.
it was a lack of training, I guess, on how to
Yeah.
handle very sensitive information.
Hmm.
and that created a very deep hurt in the person.
Yeah. And both you and I are very interested in Christian apologetics. And a lot of times we find ourselves in churches where the leaders don't know a lot about apologetics, but also
Mhm.
that in very many churches, leaders don't know a proven path to help people to work through their hurts and resentments. And so, what we want to do is not only equip people with the tools, and the ministry that we're involved with, Reasonable Faith, has done a wonderful job in equipping people with the tools to help leaders and Christians share their faith in a gentle and yet intelligent way. And that's what we want to do also, because this particular issue of having unresolved hurts and resentments, I think, is probably one of, if not the biggest issue why people end up leaving the church. And so
Yeah.
we have to have a path that we can help people along to resolve those. So the very first thing that I do is I have them, and each one of these assignments that I walk a person through in one session, recovery is not a race. And so we have to make sure that we pace ourselves and give our participants the time to process that they need. And it's a great opportunity, by the way, working from like we did week to week by way of video chat, because you have a whole week to focus on the assignment and to think about it. So in the next assignment, I have people rank their hurts. Now, I have a couple charts that I've used with this one. And one I found was a little bit confusing for folks. And I think that might have been the one that I used with you, but I don't know for sure. I can't remember if I used this one or not when I was working with you. But let's say a person is 40 years old. In the top right hand corner, in the small little box there on that, I would have them write in their age. And then along the middle line, right in the center of the paper, we would have them write 20. And then we would have the next line over 10. And then, of course, the one between the two is 30. And then 0 all the way to the left. And I want a person to begin thinking about the story of their life,
Mhm.
but also what I need to do when I'm working with somebody is I need to kind of see when things happened to them, because sometimes hurts come in clusters. And
Mhm.
sometimes that people experience major hurt in key developmental stages of their life. You said you were what, 12 years old when?
More or less, it was when I
Yeah,
was beginning high school.
yeah, yeah,
Well, high school here in Mexico, because that
yeah,
can be confusing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But you stop and think about how devastating that could be for a young man to all of a sudden dad is not in the home. In these developmental years, 12, 12.
Yeah, yeah, and well, I don't know if I've actually talked to you about this, but
Yeah.
perhaps I have. But my dad was always very distant. He
Mm-hmm.
worked a lot. He went out in the morning and then came back uh, uh, at night, and then sometimes he had to travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So he was distant uh, in the family.
Yeah.
But when we learn, and the way that we learn about his other family and all of that stuff, well, at such a young age, when I
Mm-hmm.
was around 12, yeah, that was devastating, both for me
Yeah.
and my brother. And well, my brother's been affected. Obviously, he was younger even. He was
Mm-hmm.
6 years old, I guess.
Wow.
And he's shared with me how he has struggled with the repercussions, the emotional damage,
Mm-hmm.
even
Mm-hmm.
on how he relates to women,
Yeah.
uh, specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really, really. Uh, uh, it made a number on us.
Yes. Yeah. So that's for sure. So so yeah, so what I do is I have people, and then the way that I do it is I just have them rank according to, everybody's familiar with medium, large, extra large, and 2X, sizing of clothing. And so what I have them do is I just have them assign those losses at when they happened, in what quarter of their life they happened, and then assign the degree to which they would attribute that loss as far as how big of an impact that it had on them. And the way that we structure this activity is that they can only select one 2x loss. So one, extra large loss in their life. And they can have plenty of extra large ones or large ones, but we only allow them one extra large loss in their life, because that will help us as we move forward to figure out what we need to talk about and what we need to explore. And so in your case, it was that extra large loss in your life happened with your dad. And so that we have the folks rank those hurts. And then as we go along, then what we do is that we have them go through a relationship chart. And I always try, when I work through this chart with a person, is that I always try to have them identify 5 to 10 positive memories that they have of that person, and 5 to 10 negative ones that they have. And here
I
again,
remember this chart.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Here again, you can only select one very best memory that you have, in your case with your dad, and one very worst memory that you had in the case with your dad. So, hey, would you mind, and if it's not, if you're not comfortable with it, that's fine, because but how about with the very worst? Do you remember which one you selected for your very worst memory with your dad?
Yes, the before go into that, I remember this chart very well because I remember that the positive experiences
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, memories that I had with my dad. When I put them down and then I shared the story with you, I remember that they weren't very significant.
Yeah.
The positive, the positive experiences, the positive memories, and the bad ones were more personal, were more
Mm-hmm.
deep. Yeah, definitely, it was a hard chart to fill out, and then to
Yeah.
come to realize all of what was behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the obviously the worst hurt that I put in that chart was when my dad took us to meet her, uh, his
New,
mistress,
new family, right?
his new family. Yeah, uh,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
took me and my brother. I remember he told us that he was going to take us to the circus, and then when we
And he did. you
and he
know?
did. He
Yeah.
didn't lie there.
Yeah, that's for sure.
He wasn't lying.
Yeah.
But yeah, on our way to the circus, when we were in his truck, I remember that he started sharing that he had done some bad things, and at the beginning, I remember that I thought that he was messing around. He was lying. He was. I didn't understand what was going on. But then we arrived at this house, and then he introduced us to this woman and to a baby, and yeah, all that experience. And then from there, we went to the circus. And
Yeah,
honestly, I have no memory of that. It's kind of like
yeah.
I blocked all of that
Oh
portion. I
yeah,
just had snippets of what of that evening. And then we came back here to with my mom because at the moment they were already separated. My mom already knew about all of these stuff. Obviously, they hadn't told us by then. But then my dad decided it was a good idea to tell us in this way. Uh, and yeah, that was definitely one of the worst moments of my life.
yeah. Really, really. And that, you know, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you're able to share this now. And 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 obviously, when we went through this process together, the kind of the emotional charge that that memory had such had a much more profound grip on you than it does now. You know, you can.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many people I can count it with one hand, people that know about this, that I've shared this
Mhm.
in this details with some of
Yeah,
these details. But yeah, I mean, now I'm more comfortable sharing it, and it doesn't have that weight over me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's wonderful. So that so then finally, where we end up with is that I have a person once they've gone through those various losses, excuse me, hurts that they've encountered, then I have them really think through losses. And this is nuanced because people, everybody that I've everybody that I've ever talked to about these types of things can easily recount the hurt. You know, in your case, it's easy that your dad's affair. But the losses, while they are related to the hurt, are different. And that's what we had to unearth. Let me just illustrate it with an example here. For instance, that if a spouse is an alcoholic, that's a hurt. But the losses that may follow from having a spouse who's an alcoholic could include a whole number of things, including loss of trust, loss of income, loss of intimacy, loss of taking pride in your loved one, and more. And so that that you can only grieve, yeah, or excuse me, you cannot grieve unnamed losses. Jesus says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And so what we have to do is that we have to put a label to those losses. And that's what we did in at least one session when we were visiting, is some of the things that you lost as a result of that experience in your family of origin. And
Hmm.
so, and also that it's one thing to forgive a hurt. It's an entirely different thing to forgive a loss. And that's what
Yes.
we'll be talking about next time around. So, how about for you, before we wrap up with this particular session, is there anything that you'd like to add or comment on as we are rethinking this whole experience?
Well, there's something I won't forget. It's
Mm-hmm.
not an easy path.
Mm-hmm.
As I remember, while we were looking at all of these activities and all of these assignments, it was a hard time answering that, and the week that you have uh, that we had in between our meetings was helpful because it's not something that, well, at least in my case, I wasn't able to just sit down and finish it in an hour, which You could if you had no emotions, right? But this unearths uh, deep hurt, deep resentment. There's a whole plethora of emotions
Hmm.
that come up when you're dealing with this stuff, when you're unearthing. In my case, I had hidden that hurt and I had denied it uh, for a long time. And facing that, it took me a while. It takes a lot. So
Hmm.
I would encourage people just to that if they feel overwhelmed, just take it slowly. I would encourage them not to stop the path, but if it comes to a point where they can't handle it, it's okay to pause for a while and
Yeah,
take a breath.
yeah, absolutely. I was working with one, when you were sharing your story, another person came to my mind, and I was working with a woman who had been molested, and it was a very difficult experience for her. Now, she was an adult at this time in her life, and the molestation took place when she was much younger, but it still held that that deep grip on her soul with respect to the pain and the resentments and all. And so I was walking her through this process also, and I could see that she was very troubled. And I was thinking, I don't want to push this lady too far on some of these things because I don't want her to have a breakdown. And so
Of course.
I would keep checking in with her. I'm not talking about between sessions or whatever. I'm talking about, when we would circle back to our next appointment. And I said, I says, is this too much for you? And time after time, she said, no. She says, I want to keep going on this. I want to get this behind me. And even though it can be very troubling and difficult, and, you bring this stuff up and you work through it, and it breaks its grip on your life. And I can see that just in talking with you in our subsequent meetings, that it doesn't mean like you've ever forgotten what has happened to you, but the grip that it had on your life
Hmm.
has been broken. So thank you for being transparent about that. I'm going to go ahead and conclude this session, and then we'll talk about the next 5 assignments in our next video. And so once
Of
again,
course.
Raul, thank you for your life and your willingness, and to participate with this. Now a whole lot more people know about the circus story.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you folks for joining us today. And I appreciate your interest in helping people to work through their hurts and resentments. Those people who feel cheated by life, others, and God. And so we want to help you to at least have a path to walk them down so that they can find true resolution. So in our next video, we'll be talking about the next 5 assignments in this program. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.